Hello, everybody. Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. With me today is Peggy Bud. Peggy and I are going to talk about the do's and don'ts of video conferencing. Now, if you think this is going to be a hints and tips on how to use Zoom, you're going to be disappointed. So we're going to talk about how to do video conferencing. Peggy, how would you describe yourself as your area of speciality?
My area of specialty is, I don't know what happened. My area of specialty is language and communication. Yes. And I use the neuroscience of language to help my clients effectively communicate. I have a degree in speech and language pathology, as well as a degree in educational leadership. So I really understand the neuroscience of language, as well as the ability to how to effectively teach.
So I was doing an interview with a guy last week, and he runs networking groups, which in the days before COVID-19 was all very nice because you used to sit around a table and talk to each other. And he'd moved his networking events online. So in effect, he was using Zoom to do this. And he would get 12 people on a Zoom call. And he said to me, and I said, you know, what in terms of the organization and the running of the call, what's it like versus face-to-face? And he said, it takes 5 times more effort to run it online than it does actually face-to-face because of the organization, because they like to build a relationship with the people. And normally they would ring, well, they can ring them up, but normally they would actually meet them, and they can't do that now. And also, when you're online, you've got this situation where you've got introverts and extroverts, people that like talking and people that don't like talking. So what is it that we can do in this new world of COVID-19, or what is it that we need to be doing differently? Because I've been doing conference calls for years, but probably not properly. So what is it that we could be doing differently, Peggy?
Well, first of all, and the most important, is that you really have to try to connect with the person you're talking to, and that means looking in the camera. And I know that is the hardest thing that anybody's doing online, because when you're looking in the camera, you're not looking at the screen, you're not looking at the person you're speaking to, so you actually feel like you're not connected. Whereas if you don't look in the camera, then you really aren't connected, even though you yourself feel you are, because you're looking at the person. And the other thing that happens when we're on a face-to-face conversation, we get a lot of nonverbal cues from the person that we're talking to. They're smiling, they're looking confused, they're nodding their head or shrugging their shoulders. If I'm looking in the camera, I can't really tell whether you're smiling or reacting to me. So now it's almost like I feel like I'm talking into a vacuum. And so it makes it difficult to feel like you're really connecting. And the other thing I think you need to do is you really need to smile and relax and enjoy that conversation, even though it's feeling a little unnatural, because then you are going to begin to connect more.
Because I think that when we're sitting face to face, I think we kind of probably, well, I fidget more. But actually fidgeting is part of the listening.
Sure.
I mean, I love the way that you look. You're looking at you look at me when you talk to me, and you do feel that connection of someone that's actually that's talking. Also, when we did the prep call, you said that we need to dress properly. And I checked that what I was wearing was okay. But I wasn't actually told to wear a jacket and a shirt, and I decided not to. Sorry, Peggy.
That's okay. You have to dress how you're comfortable. I do think that there's been a lot of comedy videos or even serious articles and videos that are saying to people they can stay in their pajamas, they can do what they want. I happen to feel that we're still having professional meetings and we still have to look professional. We know, again, I use the neuroscience of language to understand things. We know that when you dress sort of the part, your mind is different, your behavior is different. They know that. They've done studies with children about that. If you let children come in their play clothes to a birthday party, they behave differently than if you ask them all to get dressed up. Eventually, the little kids will kind of melt down. But at first, they feel like they're in this party mode and they better respond that way. And it's hard. I think that going to fidgeting, I think when we're sitting across the table from somebody, we're a lot more relaxed than we're sitting in a chair. But if we're moving around in front of the computer, it's going to be very distracting. So we do need to be conscious of sitting upright and still and smiling. And I think that's why what you hear a lot of people say at the end of the day that they've done Zoom calls, I'm exhausted.
Yes.
They are exhausted. It's been hard to focus. Listening is, you're listening all the time. And if you do look down, if I sat here while you were talking and looked at my phone or did something else, you'd see that. And that's not acceptable. When you're sitting in a meeting of a group of people, nobody's really necessarily focusing on you. So you can kind of do things without people noticing. So that makes it a little more relaxing.
I think that, I when I do these, I have to turn off all the distractions. And I think sometimes that if you're having, I must admit, I had a call before this and I didn't turn off the distractions. But sometimes, we use Slack, for example, and it will be flashing that someone's trying to get hold of me, and you never know whether it's an emergency, but it's not an emergency because I'm doing this. What's the priority? But I do, I'm very careful to turn these off. But I think it's probably something that we don't do enough of.
You're right. I mean, I've gotten into the habit of unplugging the extension phone in my office when I'm on the phone, and obviously turning off any other devices, and also locking the door to the room. And I will tell you that I do not believe in locking doors. I always feel that something could happen if you have a door locked and then somebody can't get in. However, when I'm doing a call, before I did that, one time somebody came in, the dog came in. It's just not acceptable. Again, this is professional, and if you want to maintain this, and this is going to be going on for a long time, we need to have people understand that we are not just working from home and being relaxed, but we're working from home because we need to work from home. This is our office now, but we are still doing the same high quality, effective work that we always did.
And we still need to maintain the, we can come to work in jeans and t-shirt, but we still need to maintain the level of professionalism that we would have in the office.
Correct. And if everybody in your office went to work in jeans and a t-shirt, and you're going to have a meeting with people in your office, if everybody's wearing jeans and a t-shirt, that's fine. I think that women should feel that they need to put on their makeup and do their hair. If a man shaves, he shouldn't say, well, now I'm working from home, I don't have to do that. I think we need to do and look like we would in the office. And also, I know a lot of offices where they wear casual jeans and t-shirts all the time. If they have a business meeting, they possibly dress. If they're talking to a client, I think they should be doing the same thing now. If you're having a Zoom meeting with a client, that means that you need to be dressed. And if you're just having a Zoom meeting with your colleagues and this is how you always are, well, this is how you always are. You shouldn't change that. But you shouldn't dress so much more down than you did when you went to work.
So how about your voice and the way that you talk and I'm terrible for using my hands and things. So what is it that we should be doing, or should we be doing anything differently the way that we talk to people on a conference call or a Zoom call?
Okay, you lost me, but I'm sure there you go. First of all, I'm going to go to your hands, because if you met me in person, I use my hands all the time. I've learned that when you are online and doing a call, and if I use my hands, see how they look, it's distracting, they look a little bit blurry. That's not going to help my conversation. So I really work very hard at holding my hands. Sometimes
hands on the desk, or hands on the table,
or even hands. I have it the way I'm sitting now. I'm using my hands to talk, but they're underneath the desk, so you can't see my hands. But if I didn't use them at all, I probably couldn't talk. But I know that putting them out there for you to see, as you saw through my demo, is distracting, and that's not what you want to be looking at. It makes it becomes a distraction on the screen. As far as how you speak, most people speak too fast. I think we know that. When I coach people, even before coaching them online, I talked about slowing down. It's very important when you're having a business meeting or presenting or even networking with somebody. You want them to be able to understand what you say. And that means you have to speak a little more slowly than you would if you were having a FaceTime conversation with your friend. And so here's how you do it. Believe it or not, if you slow yourself down just a little bit, your body is going to start to feel like it's in slow motion. That's at that point, you know you're speaking the right speed, because you're not sounding like a robot. You can hear that your speech is fluid and sounds good, but your body says, this isn't quite how I'm used to. That's the way you should be speaking when you present.
Yeah.
And I think it's the way you should be speaking when you're doing a Zoom call. There's so many other things going on that it helps the person understand. We need to also enunciate. I like to use the example of going to the theater. Any good theater has a great sound system. You lost me again. I don't know why. Any great theater has a great sound system. However, you pay a lot more money to sit down close. Why is that? Why can't you hear? It's because we also listen by watching people's mouths, and we understand by looking at their face. So if you have good facial expressions and enunciate, people are going to understand you much better. And that's why people pay the big bucks to sit down, center orchestra. Well, right now, you and I are center stage. And we need to be speaking so that people can really understand us and not mumbling. All of this takes practice, and it probably takes some coaching for people who say, oh, gee, I always had a little bit with trouble with communication. The thing is, on a Zoom call, you're upfront and personal, a lot more than if I was sitting across the table from you in a pub or a coffee shop, or even in a conference room. I would even be farther away if I'm sitting around a table. In a Zoom call, you see my face and just my upper body, and it has to all work.
And I must admit, I learned to talk a lot slower. I was running a team across Europe, Middle East, and Africa. And I was the only person that spoke English as my first language. And so I learned, I had to slow up. And I actually found, once you got over the bit of the fact that it's really scary because you want to talk really fast, because that actually your brain learns to slow down. And actually, I found I could talk a lot clearer by actually reducing the speed of my my voice. And I got used to it. And I always tell people, when we're running calls, we've got people where English isn't necessarily the first language. I've got a guy who runs my HR practice, and even telling him to talk at half speed usually means that people can't understand what he says in English. So I think it's, I do agree. I think it's really important. And what about body language? So I was told from an early age about active listening, which is putting your head on one side and then repeating back what the other person has said, so you could show that there's an understanding. What do you think to that?
Okay.
You probably say it's wrong, but
okay.
You can say it's wrong, Peggy. Don't worry.
No, that's okay. I want to just roll back a comment that you said as another tip that we can give people, and that is, in clarity, not only do we want to reduce our speed, talking almost like you're talking in bullet points helps you get your message across. That's number one tip. Number two tip is thinking about the rule of three. If you're going to give a concept, an idea, people's brains can't remember and hold more than three things at one time. That's and life has kind of presented that to us, whether it's morning, afternoon and evening, beginning, middle and end, even going to the church, the Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost. Everything's in threes, because after that we're going to forget. So we have to remember when we're speaking. If we think about, we should do 1, 2, 3, they're going to remember it. What happens is, it's like if I'm throwing a ball. If I throw one ball, you can catch it. If I throw 2 balls, you can catch it if they're not too. And even if I throw 3 balls, if we're close enough, I can probably finagle a way to catch and hold them. If you try to give me a 4th ball and I try to go for it, I'm going to drop all the balls. And what people don't know is your brain is going to drop all the information.
Yes.
People think, well, maybe they won't remember all 4 or all 5, but they'll remember 2. No, they're going to remember none. You put them on overload, and their brain said, nope, not remembering anything. Okay, now to your question. Now I forgot what your question was about body language and active listening. You are so correct that tilting your head, showing you're listening is important. Smiling is important. Of course, as I said before, on a video call, I'm looking at the camera, so I'm not getting, I'm learning to sort of see a little bit of what the other person is doing, but it's hard. So your body language isn't going to be as effective, because your listener, if they're really doing what they should be doing, looking at the camera, they're going to miss some of that. Active listening, on the other hand, of using something you said as the way to begin my conversation, is very important. Just like I said when I was starting this, you asked me about body language. Yeah. Now, what I've done is I've demonstrated that I really heard what you wanted me to talk about. I'm not having my own agenda, even though I did kind of sneak something in there. I'm not having my own agenda. I'm actually answering your question. And it showed that I was listening to what you said. And that is really important. Otherwise, there's going to be a breakdown in communication, which means that there's going to be misunderstandings and things aren't going to get accomplished the way they should. So I think being an active listener and either summarizing what somebody said or using what they said as a way to begin their comment is a great way. And a third thing is, you can actually say, I hear you say, and then sort of repeat what that person said, and then add your own comments. So that also validates that you heard what the other person said. A great thing that we should remember about doing that is, too often people comment on what somebody says, and then they begin their comment with, but, and all that does is negate everything that you said. So we have to remember, when we do that, technique that we then say, and. So it's, yes, you said, and now I can add what I think.
So we should be saying, I hear what you say, and then repeating rather than saying, I hear what you say, but.
Correct. Absolutely correct. Because that will make sure that the person that's speaking doesn't feel that what you said was not valid. Because a but just says, well, but no.
It's a bit of a smack in the face, really, isn't it?
Sure.
Yeah.
It is.
So, so we're talking one-to-one. With a Zoom call can be multiple people.
Correct.
What is it that we should be doing from an etiquette perspective when we're working in that environment? Because we've got things like the technology that says put your hand up and things, but what else is there that we could be doing?
Okay, first of all, I think that when people come into these group calls, I was on one yesterday afternoon, and some people came on the call and the lighting was so bad that you couldn't even see them. Some people came on the call, they were, you saw this much of their head. I think that whether you're doing one-to-one or a group call, what you need to be doing is still all the things I've talked about. How you look, how the lighting is. You need to be smiling and showing you're engaged. As I said, that's exhausting. Because now when you're sitting in an hour conference call and an hour conference meeting, you let down your guard because everybody's looking at somebody else. Think about you're sitting around a table. Now the table is a flat screen and everybody sees everybody. So if I look down at my phone, it says to everybody, oh, she's not really listening to what's going on.
Yeah.
And then if I made a comment, it's, well, how could she say that? She wasn't even listening. So I think if you are on a call, you need to say, I'm going to really be engaged, or you're giving a lot of nonverbal messages that I don't believe you want to be giving to the group.
So I think in the days of going to meetings and deciding that you're just going to go there and it fills an hour of your day shouldn't really be the thing that you want to do, because I think people are going to find that out. And I agree with you. I mean, I actually usually turn my phone over because I don't like the distractions, but I usually keep things ready and waiting, because sometimes people can't log in, and then I never know whether they're going to phone me or text me or whatever. But I mean, the distractions are just so, there's always that email that comes in, and it's like, it's not a priority. It can wait.
Correct. And I really think no different than if you are going to in some sort of a meeting and you know that you're expecting a very important call that you have to take, a doctor's call or some kind of an emergency. You would tell the people in the room, I have my phone and I'm not going to be talking on it, but I'm going to be watching if calls come in because I have an emergency. You don't have to tell too much information. An emergency will handle that. I think if you're in a group and it's a team meeting or something, and you are going to have to keep looking at it, and then you might even say, and if this call comes in, I'm going to leave. So you would get up and actually, I would say, remove yourself from the situation. People are going to understand. Whereas if you just do it and either shut off the video or leave the room, people don't know why, and they can't really have the conversation. And now you've sent a message, what I like to label unintended. Yes. You didn't mean to tell these people that I wasn't interested. So we do have to be open and honest. Now, if you're in a large group situation where you don't know anyone, you're just going to have to do what you have to do.
So I thought I'd leave a controversial question to the end. So do men and women communicate differently?
They do.
Right.
We know that there is I used to do in-person training and speaking on bridging the gender divide. I can do a webinar on that. They do speak differently. They use words differently. There are things that are hardwired. My vocal range and yours is different. Nothing I can do about it. I think some of the gender breakdowns when we're in person, I think are more apparent than when we're sitting like this. I think there's a little bit of a leveler, but we do communicate differently. We respond to what we say differently. We use language differently. And it's just a matter, there is no right or wrong. How we look at each other, how we value what's being said. I think one of the problems women oftentimes feel, if you're in a group meeting and on a Zoom call, it's going to be no different. If a woman makes a suggestion, especially if she's like one of the only women in the room, oftentimes it isn't validated, and a man can make that same suggestion and they say, wow, that's a great idea. I think we have to be conscious of that. We also have to be conscious as women. We tend to be much more verbal, and we tend to give what I like to call a verbal dump. If you're in a meeting, you want to tell everything you know. Just like at the beginning, I was saying we have to be speaking in bullet points and being slowing down. If women maybe have to spend more time preparing, but if you're going to be presenting at a meeting, you really need to know, answer the question. Don't tell everything you need to, everything you know on the topic. And that's a tendency that women have. And I'm sure whether they're on a Zoom call or whether they're sitting in a conference room and having a meeting, that's what they're going to want to do because they want to prove themselves. I urge them to really think about what they're saying so that they don't give too much information.
We were doing a branding session, and someone came up with the idea that we should do branding like Formula One. And all the men kind of stood up and went, yeah, that's a great idea. And all the women sat there, rolled their eyes and went, oh. And it was a classic example of how men and women are different and have different belief systems and see the world differently. And that's the way it is. And we need to be cognizant of that.
Right. It is that way. It's a whole conversation that we could have at a different point. But the thing is that part of how we respond is connected to socialization, and part of it is hardwired. And until society stops socializing little boys and little girls differently, reacting to them differently, having different expectations, even in our minds, believing that a little boy is going to grow up and have more responsibility than a little girl. If we don't stop doing that, that gender divide is just not going to ever go away. I want to believe it will.
We still have a long way to go on that.
We do.
We did a whole load of work for International Women's Day. Equality is something that Adam Gray, my business partner, and I are very passionate about. But we still have a long way to go.
We do. We all do. And I think what it really is about is having a lot of conversations and talking about it instead of just accepting it. Because until we talk about it and understand what we're doing and heighten our awareness of that, I don't think it's going to go away. But I think once we have those conversations and become aware of, oh, I said that, or I told my child that, or I responded this way, I didn't mean that, then things will start to change. Because oftentimes we just say things without thinking.
Yeah. Peggy, it's been really insightful for me. I hope people get something from this. Where can people find you?
They can find me by
LinkedIn.
Pardon? They can find me on LinkedIn. It's Peggy Bud. They can find me by emailing me at Peggy, Peggy, at PeggyBud.com. And Bud only has one D. So if you put two, you're not going to find it.
Yeah.
It's only one. And my business, they can also Google Speaking Skillfully. So any one of those, I'd love to help anyone, whether it's being more effective communicating online or helping their organizations be more effective. I'm great at doing webinars, or I've done some facilitated conversations where I've taken some leadership teams and put them together and had them talk about problems, and we problem solved them related to communication. So please reach out to me. Love to help you. Love to help your companies. Thank you, Tim, for inviting me.
Hey,
It's been
you're welcome.
wonderful.
And stay safe, Peggy.
Oh, you too.
And look after the dog as well.
I will.
Yeah.
Thank you. Take
Peggy.
care.
Great talking to you. Bye.
Nice talking to you. Bye.